This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 323. I am so glad you're here. Today we are talking all about making your curriculum choices when it comes to homeschooling neurodivergent kids, gifted, twice exceptional, or any way their brains are wired. How it is different than just plucking a boxed curriculum off the shelf. So buckle up because this is a good one, full of information and hopefully some clarity and freedom that will help you make the decisions that you need to make when it comes to teaching your kids at home. Before we begin, I just want to give a special thanks to CTC Math, as always, for supporting this podcast. Check them out at ctcmath.com or through the link in our show notes if you are looking for a discount on a great and adaptable math curriculum this year. I'll talk a little bit about it in the podcast, but just know that CTC Math is a great curriculum for neurodivergent kids because it's highly adaptable. All right, check it out and pop those earbuds in and let's get on with today's episode. Hey there, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking all about curriculum, but not necessarily in the way that you might expect. I'm not going to give you my top 10 science programs that I think all neurodivergent families should know. I'm not going to tell you which language arts curriculum has the most beautiful picture books or workbooks or hands-on activities, and I'm definitely not going to tell you that there's one magical curriculum out there for any of your neurodivergent kids, and certainly not one that will finally make homeschooling your twice exceptional, gifted, neurodivergent in any way, shape, or form child easy. Because if you've been doing this for any length of time, you know that's just not possible. The magical curriculum does not exist, and yet it's easy to believe that the next one you pick up might just be it. It might just be the one that does the trick. You know the curriculum that I mean. You find it online. The website is beautiful. There are gorgeous photographs of children happily working on uncluttered wooden tables. There are carefully curated book lists, hands-on activities, beautiful illustrations, and everyone looks happily finishing up the assignments for the day. All of the family is sitting around cozy as you can be. Maybe there's nature journals or watercolor tutorials or maps or beautifully organized student workbooks. And you start imagining it in your homeschool. Maybe it's even a curriculum that bills itself as the perfect curriculum for your autistic child, or the exact curriculum and strategies and methodology that your dyslexic child needs in order to be successful when they learn to read. And you're thinking, this is it. This is the curriculum that is going to fix everything. You order it, it arrives, you open it, you just flip through each of the new books that are included and you organize it all, maybe even buy a really cute basket for it or reorganize your shelves. And I am speaking to myself here too. You can ask my children how many times I've reorganized the dining room, which we use as a schoolroom, or reorganized the shelves or gotten a new system in place. And it tends to fall apart pretty quickly. So maybe you're doing the same, and for the first few days, it's glorious. And then your twice exceptional child looks at page 5 and says, I'm not doing that. Or, why do I have to write all of this? I know the answers anyway. or this is boring, or I can't do this. And there's meltdowns and complete and total chaos ensues. And suddenly you're looking at this beautiful curriculum that was going to solve all the problems. And you're wondering how something that looked so perfect in the online catalog or on TikTok or on Instagram could actually fit your child so poorly. If this has happened to you, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and you didn't necessarily pick a bad curriculum. You simply chose a curriculum based on the wrong criteria. Because when you're choosing curriculum for a neurodivergent kiddo, or you're working with a twice exceptional kiddo, maybe a gifted child with another kind of learning challenge like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, anxiety, executive function challenges, sensory challenges, or other learning needs, the most important question isn't, is this curriculum good? The better question is, can this curriculum bend? Is it flexible? Can I shorten it? Can I accelerate it? Can I change it up if I need to? Can I skip around? Can I slow it down? Can my child demonstrate something like his understanding without writing everything out? Can we skip the repetition? Is there repetition at all? Can we go deeper when something sparks our curiosity? Can we pause it when life gets hard and pick it up without any hiccups? Can I separate the intellectual challenges from the output demands? Can I use this curriculum as a tool instead of allowing it to become my boss? Because for neurodivergent learners, adaptability matters more than aesthetics. That's also why anytime somebody tells you that they have the perfect curriculum for whatever neurodivergence you're looking for a curriculum to help with, it's not possible. And so you really want to look at the person who's saying, this is the perfect curriculum for autistic children, or this is the perfect curriculum for dyslexic children. You want to look at that curriculum carefully, and you want to keep your child in mind. I was at a conference recently, and one of the attendees was talking to me about an experience that she had in one of the talks that she was in. And the reading specialist who was giving the talk made a point to talk about why other tutors, methodologies, or curriculum doesn't work when her methodology and tutoring strategies and curriculum do for dyslexic learners. And this particular parent who was talking to me about this was put off by it, and rightfully so, because the truth is that curriculum may be a phenomenal curriculum. And as I've looked at that particular curriculum before, I can attest it's a great curriculum that works for a lot of people. That tutoring methodology may be fabulous, but nothing is going to work 100% of the time for all children. Children have different needs, and we need to keep that in mind when we're looking at the curriculum. So, we're going to talk today about why twice exceptional and otherwise neurodivergent kids are so difficult to choose and purchase curriculum for, the traps parents fall into, what adaptability actually looks like, and the questions I want you to ask before you spend another $2, $3, or even more $100 on something that your child may not only hate by October, but may not even be able to do successfully. And most importantly, I want you to remember this, and I want to help you throughout this episode. Curriculum serves the child does not serve the curriculum. So let's get into it. But I also want you to remember and to recognize that curriculum is just one tool. It's a methodology, it's a set of materials that can help you educate your child. It's not the education itself, it's the tool that helps you provide the education. Do I think curriculum is valuable? Absolutely. Do I think all curriculum is right for all children? No, absolutely not. We need to take our own individual children in mind. But I also want you to remember that you are the person who is going to be in your homeschool the longest. So I'm going to give you the perfect example of me right now. We're entering our, is it 17th or 18th year? I have to crunch the numbers. Might be 17 and a half because we started mid-year with my oldest son. So my oldest son's 23. So I guess that would be the 17th year. We're starting our 17th year, maybe 17 and a half. So he's 23. He's graduated, obviously. My 19-year-old is graduated and in college, and I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old entering this particular school year. I've been in my homeschool a long time. My 19-year-old never went to a traditional school. She always homeschooled from the start. She's done and in college, and I'm still going. I still have a minimum of 5 years of homeschooling left, meaning I will have been in my homeschool for 22 or 23 years. That's a lot longer than each of my children. Since I'm in my homeschool, in the everyday, longer than anyone else, the curriculum that we choose for our family not only needs to fit the way our children learn and be adaptable and flexible and able to be used with each of their asynchronous needs, but the curriculum has to be one I'm actually going to use. I need to have a curriculum in my homeschool. You need to have a curriculum in your homeschool that you're going to use, because the best curriculum is not the one that fits the most perfect and hits every single thing you need, or is the one that's going to be pulled off the shelf and meet all the needs of everybody in your homeschool. The best curriculum for you and your family is the one you're actually going to use. Your curriculum does you no good if it's sitting wrapped in cellophane on the shelf, looking at you with all its beauty, if you never ever use it, or if every one of you hates it and it's too much work. So, curriculum serves the child, it is a tool, and the best curriculum is the one that you're going to use. So, let's take a look at why curriculum breaks down for any kind of neurodivergent kid, or why these kids break curriculum plans. So let's start with the obvious problem. Twice exceptional, gifted, neurodivergent in any way, kids are uneven. They are asynchronous. They're really asynchronous, meaning they're many different ages at once. That's part of what makes homeschooling them both so fascinating and so challenging. You might have a 10-year-old who can discuss astrophysics with an adult but struggles to write 3 sentences by hand. You might have an 8-year-old who is reading novels written for teenagers but who still needs help remembering a 3-step morning routine. You might have a gifted mathematician who can intuitively understand advanced concepts but makes simple computational errors because of attention or working memory challenges. You might have a child with exceptional verbal reasoning skills who freezes when asked an open-ended question on paper. That's an asynchronous profile. And most curriculum isn't designed for asynchronous learners. Curriculum tends to assume that if a child is approximately a 5th grade level in one area, then they should be able to do 5th grade reading, writing. Their output, attention, organization, emotional regulation, and independence is all that of a typical 5th grader, and it all kind of travels together. But twice exceptional students, neurodivergent kids, routinely blow that assumption apart. Their comprehension might be really high. Their handwriting might be really low. The mathematical reasoning is way over to the left. Their processing speed is somewhere else, and their emotional development may look younger in one situation and years older in another. Their executive function skills can fluctuate depending on sleep, stress, interest, sensory load, and approximately 17 billion other variables. And then we buy something labeled grade 6. What exactly does that mean for our child? It's why I want us to stop asking, what grade is my child in, when choosing curriculum, and start asking ourselves, what does my child need from and for this particular subject? They're completely different questions. There's actually 2 mistakes parents commonly make with neurodivergent learners when it comes to curriculum. The first, especially when it comes to our gifted and twice exceptional kids, is buying for the gift, buying for the intellect. We see how intellectually capable our children are, and so we choose appropriately challenging material. Fantastic. This is amazing. We want to challenge our kids' intellect and push them past their comfort zone from time to time, but the curriculum might require enormous amounts of handwriting that they're just not ready for, or sustained independent work, which, as we know, for some of our twice exceptional learners, they just can't handle. Complicated organization, long assignments, or executive function skills that our kiddos just don't have yet. Then we conclude that our kids just weren't ready for the material. But intellectually, they absolutely were. They just weren't ready for the output demands of that particular curriculum. That's completely different. The second mistake that we can make when we're purchasing curriculum for neurodivergent learners, especially twice exceptional ones, is then we start buying for the disability or the challenge. We think my child struggles with writing, so we need an easier language arts curriculum. And now we've accidentally given a gifted or profoundly gifted or just highly capable kiddo material written at an intellectual level that will bore them senseless. They can physically access it, but cognitively they're starving for more. This is one of the central challenges of homeschooling gifted, twice exceptional, and otherwise neurodivergent kids. We have to support the challenges that they have without suppressing the strengths. And I talk a lot about this in my book, The Homeschool Advantage, a child focused approach to raising lifelong learners, because it focuses a lot on strengths and weaknesses and how we can play into our kids' strengths and then use the success our kids are riding on through those successes or through those strengths to shore up their weaknesses. Curriculum has to be flexible enough to let us do both, that supporting of the challenges that they face while not suppressing the strengths that they have. So I want to save you a little bit of money here. Stop looking for the perfect curriculum. There is no perfect curriculum. The only curriculum that is more or less useful is the one that is right for the child you have right now. I know that it is really noisy on the internet right now. It is way noisier than it was when I started homeschooling. When I started homeschooling, Instagram did not even exist yet. Really, like I'm a dinosaur. I started homeschooling. I started my homeschooling blog when blogging was the thing. I don't really know how many people were really even podcasting back then. In fact, I did an assessment of my site recently to like fix holes and gaps and just broken links and things like that. I have over 1,100 articles written on that website right now. And I post new content all the time. There is so much information there. But when I first started, there were homeschool blogs around and they were newish. There were no Facebook groups or Instagram groups, or there was certainly no TikTok. There was nothing to connect you online to other homeschoolers, for sure not in your area. And in order to find other homeschoolers doing it, we would like camp out at the library during the day and cautiously approach other families who looked like they might have school age children and also weren't in school that day. And so we were figuring out as we went along. And now it's so noisy that you have to sift through so much to figure out what's actually going to work for your family, which is why I really implore you to look at the child first and then build from there. There are also people out there telling you all sorts of things like you have to have this particular type of schedule in order to be successful. And if you're not doing these kinds of things every single day in your homeschool, you're actually neglectful. And then there are others telling you your kids are just going to be fine. They'll figure everything out on their own and you can just let them go. They'll eventually learn what they need to learn. And those are two very, very extreme ends of opposing viewpoints when it comes to homeschool. I'm going to tell you, I fit probably somewhere comfortably in the middle. I give my kids a lot of freedom when it comes to their interests and their passions, but there's some structure involved as well. They do a certain number of math lessons. There's a certain amount of writing and reading and activities that I want them to do each day. There's certain amounts of outside the house activities I want them to do because I want them to articulate themselves well and be able to talk with other people. And I want to make sure that we're finding their thing so that they have goals to pursue. And we do use curriculum. We use kind of a pick and choose approach to curriculum. I've talked a lot on this podcast, and there will be a break here in just a few minutes where you hear another conversation with me about CTC math. That's one of our choices in curriculum. It's one that works well for our family. And there are a couple other curriculums that we have used over the years, and I will link them in the show notes for this episode. But there are also subjects that we don't really use curriculum for, or we're very loosely looking at it. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at the child that we have right now. And I intentionally say right now, because that's another thing that nobody tells you when you start homeschooling. Something can work beautifully one year and completely fall apart the next year. Something can even work beautifully in September and stop working in February. This doesn't necessarily mean you chose wrong, your child failed, or you wasted your money. It also doesn't mean that you give it up. It also doesn't mean that you keep it going. It means that you look at the child you have right now and you figure out what is the best fit for them in that moment. But you've got to remember, needs change, kids develop, executive function grows, interests shift, anxiety changes, life circumstances, family circumstances change. Sometimes the season changes. So instead of thinking of curriculum as the plan for our homeschool, I want you to think of curriculum as a resource. It's just one of many resources in your homeschool toolbox. That means you can use chapter 3, then skip chapter 4. Do chapter 5 out loud together. Replace chapter 6 with a documentary. Spend 3 weeks on chapter 7 because your child is fascinated by the topic. And then completely abandon chapter 8. The curriculum police are not coming for you, I promise you that. In fact, we have adjusted ourselves so many times over the years that it's crazy when I look back on it. I remember one kind of season in our homeschool when my kids were absolutely fascinated with ancient Egypt. We were using at the time the Mystery of History curriculum, and we were using it primarily as a read aloud and then doing extension activities based on the things that really caught my kids' interest because they were young. And I was just hoping to give them an overview of kind of historical events. They were so fascinated with the section that I read about ancient Egypt that we spent 7 months learning all about Egypt, past, present, potential futures. We wrote stories, we acted things out. The kids wrapped up their dolls like mummies. We mummified apples and chicken legs and things like that. We did all sorts of experiments. We did art. We wrapped in history and science and art and literature and writing. It was incredible. It was so much fun. We never got through the rest of that Mystery of History book because we ended up doing other things. And that's okay. I also remember a year when my son was in high school and we had a history textbook that I didn't really love after I started reading it. I felt that it was pretty biased. I felt that there was a definite slant by the publishers of that particular curriculum in a way that I thought, well, I didn't mind necessarily their worldview. I did not enjoy the gaps they chose. All curriculum has gaps. You can't fill every piece of history into a single history textbook. But I felt that some of the gaps were glaring and made it a very one-sided history curriculum. And so it didn't feel like a good fit for us, but it was what I had at the time. So I challenged my son to take a unit at a time so we could accelerate through it, read the unit and the unit, like the end of the unit questions, just to have them in the back of his head on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I had queued up documentaries from YouTube and Curiosity Stream and Discovery Learning and other sources. And then I'd have him watch those so he could discern what was missing in each presentation. And then we would have hot chocolate or coffee or whatever on Friday morning and we'd talk about the unit. And we made some great connections and the conversations were incredible. And it was a really valid way to use a history program. So circumstances, needs, and abilities change from subject to subject and year to year. So it's up to you to adapt it because nobody's coming for you, especially if your child is ending their homeschool career with a well-rounded education, a solid base of knowledge, and the ability to admit when they don't know something and find an answer to anything they need to find an answer to. I also want you to remember that curriculum is not a contract. Sometimes we spend $200 or $300 on a curriculum and we feel morally obligated to finish it. It's a waste of money otherwise, right? No, that is sunk cost thinking. I paid for it, so we're finishing it no matter what. But if something isn't working, forcing another 6 months of misery doesn't recover the money anyway. It just increases the cost. It increases the emotional toll it's taking, the physical toll, the mental toll, and the toll on yours and your child's relationships with one another. And that's just not worth the cost. Now that you've spent the money and you've damaged your child's relationship with not only the subject, but potentially you as well. Use what serves you, change what doesn't. In the example I gave about the history textbook that we had, that curriculum did not serve us well. And so we used it in a very unique way. I wasn't going to go out and buy a whole nother curriculum because it was a good conversation piece about slant and critical thinking. And so we used what served us within that curriculum, and then we changed what didn't. So that leads me into what I really truly think is the most important consideration when you're thinking about the curriculum that you're going to purchase. Once you have your child, who they currently are in mind, you can start thinking about the adaptability. So what do we look for when we're looking for adaptability of a curriculum? The number one criteria for whether or not a curriculum is twice exceptional, gifted, neurodivergent friendly is adaptability. And I want to break that down into 6 specific areas. The first one is, can I change the pace? Can your child move quickly through what they know? This is huge for gifted learners, right? Your child demonstrates mastery after 5 problems. Do they really need 30 more problems to prove that, yeah, they've really mastered it? That just seems like excessive force. Sometimes repetition builds fluency, absolutely. And some of our kids desperately need that repetition. I've got at least 2 that would need that repetition in certain subjects, and I've got at least 2 who wouldn't. But repetition for the sake of completing pages can destroy engagement. Look for curriculum where you can pretest, you can compact the curriculum, like break it down to the 5 most difficult problems. You can skip problems, you can accelerate, or you can linger. And this doesn't just go for math. This can be for science and history and other kinds of topics as well. The pace should belong to your learner and not the teacher's guide. Okay, let me say that again. The pace of the curriculum should belong to you and your learner, your kiddo, not what the teacher guide says. Okay, remember that. Can I change the pace of the curriculum? So I've been using CTC Math for years now, and I have to say, one of the things I love most about it is its adaptability. CTC gives you access when you subscribe to all of their levels. You get access immediately to grades kindergarten through calculus. So it's perfect for kids who have an asynchronous learning profile, meaning they are many different ages at once, because sometimes concepts will come really quickly for asynchronous kids, and sometimes they'll come a little bit more slowly. But CTC, having all of those levels up front, right at your fingertips, allows your kiddos to work at their own pace. If they understand something and they get the concept super quickly, they can accelerate through it and do multiple levels in one day, sometimes even getting through multiple grade levels in a school year. And then when they hit some of the more challenging math and maybe it's not as intuitive for them, they can slow down and they can take a little bit longer. It is perfect for neurodivergent families, especially those who are homeschooling asynchronous and or gifted kiddos. If you're looking for a new math program for your family and you're looking for one that is easily tailored to the kids that are in your home, the learning profiles you currently have, And it's completely affordable, one price for all grade levels for all of your family and kids, and comes with a money-back guarantee and people who really truly care about your kids learning their math. You need to check out ctcmath.com. Now, you could either go over straight to ctcmath.com and check it out, or you could head over to the show notes for this episode or in the description on your favorite podcast app and click through that. When you click through that, it automatically applies a special offer that CTC has just for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners, and I'd hate to have you miss out on that if you were purchasing. It's a great deal. It's actually the deal that we use too, because I do subscribe and pay for my subscription. I've been a customer of CTC Math for close to a decade now, and I still pay for my subscription. And I'd love for you to be able to take advantage of the same offer. So check them out, ctcmath.com, or head over to the show notes at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast and click on the CTC link through there, and it will automatically apply the special discount that it has for Raising Lifelong Learners listeners. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Okay, so like you just heard, CTC is a great option for a math curriculum that fits that criteria of, is it adaptable? And we use it in an adaptable way all the time. Sometimes my kids who need more repetition do more problems or go through the lesson several times. And then the ones that get it pretty quickly can just move on or skip lessons that they already know. So is it adaptable? Number 2, can I change the output? This may even be more important than the pace. Does every lesson require writing? And can your child instead dictate, type, answer orally, draw, build, record a video, create a presentation, demonstrate something, or just have a conversation with you about it? If the learning objective is explain the causes of the American Revolution, and your child can give you an incredibly nuanced 15-minute explanation, do they really need to handwrite 5 paragraphs to prove that they understood that concept? Maybe if you're specifically working on essay writing, then yeah, output matters in that case. But if you're assessing history knowledge, don't accidentally assess handwriting or essay writing or creative writing. This is an important distinction. Ask what skill you're actually mastering and measuring. Ask what skill your child is actually mastering and what you're measuring, and then make sure the output fits that skill. So again, as in the example of explain the causes of the American Revolution, if this was a chance for you to watch how your kiddo presents an essay with a good thesis and then supporting paragraphs and sentences and great conclusions with examples from the text, definitely have them write an essay. But if you're assessing essay writing in another way, then, and you have a handwriting book or other things like that, you don't need every single assignment in history to show what their essay writing and handwriting abilities are. You can have them explain it to you. And if you're content, or they can explain it in a way that breaks it down, then they've mastered the information and we should let them go. Okay, the third one. So that was changing the output. Is that possible? Number 3 is, can I change the level of challenge? A good curriculum for a neurodivergent kiddo gives you room to go sideways and deeper if necessary. Maybe the core lesson is really easy. Could you add primary sources or advanced books and experiments? Could you add a debate, a project, an open-ended question? And then conversely, can you keep the intellectual content while scaffolding the mechanics? So if it's a little bit challenging when it comes to the writing, maybe the physical act of writing is something that your child is struggling with because they are asynchronous, but their ability to understand and explain things in a cognitive way is very advanced. And so this is a chance for you to keep the intellectual information and the cognitive concepts and then scale down the mechanics so they're not overworking the skills that you're learning and getting frustrated with them. That's the sweet spot. Can you accelerate and go deeper if the lessons are too easy, while breaking down the mechanics to make those more manageable if the intellectual component is on target. Okay, so can I change the challenge level? Number 4, can I change the format? Some kids need audio or video or hands-on learning or discussion-based learning or visuals or movement. If the curriculum depends too heavily on one mode of instruction, that's a yellow flag, right? It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but you need to ask yourself how difficult it will be to adapt the format in order for your child to be successful with it. In the example I gave earlier of Mystery of History, it's a great adaptable program, or it was 17 years ago, 15 years ago when I used it, because you could also purchase it in audio form. So if you were using it as the springboard for the rest of your curriculum, you could buy the book where you read aloud to your kids, or you could buy the audio that you put in your car when you were on your way to therapies or activities or things like that. So they were listening to history while they were a captive audience. There was also a book that went along with it that broke down mini lessons for you as a parent and gave you lots and lots of options of different kinds of activities, writing assignments, hands-on activities, questions you could ask to assess comprehension. So that was a really easy one to change the format of. And so you want to look at the program, the curriculum you're thinking about, and see if you can change the format. Number 5, can I change the schedule? This one matters a lot for neurodivergent families. Does missing Tuesday mean the entire plan falls apart? Is it organized on a strict 4-day week schedule? Can you do 3 lessons one week and one the next? Can you pause during a difficult emotional season? Rigid daily plans can sometimes make families feel perpetually behind. I want curriculum to fit into your life. And I want curriculum to fit into my life, not creating a life that revolves around keeping up with a curriculum. I had friends years ago whose family used a curriculum that was very much set on a 4-day a week schedule. And while they usually did their homeschooling Monday through Thursday and then had Fridays as fun days, when we were all in a co-op together and the co-op met on Wednesday, they had to do their curriculum on Monday and Tuesday and then Thursday and Friday. And they went to co-op on Wednesdays. And so we weren't able to get together with them that often outside of co-op or the weekends because they were tied to getting those things done so they weren't behind the following week. So you want to make sure that because of the nature of neurodivergence, if we're having a rough patch or if your child is medically fragile and you have a setback and you need to visit the doctor or the hospital, or your therapies need to be ramped up for whatever reason, that's going to set you back. It's going to take time away from being home. And so you want something that's either flexible enough that doesn't matter, or something that you can adapt, again, changing the format and doing on the road. So changing the schedule. And then number 6, can I follow rabbit trails? This one's one of my favorites. This is probably one of my favorite parts about homeschooling, especially homeschooling neurodivergent kids, because we went on so many rabbit trails over the years, and they're probably my most treasured memories of my older kids homeschooling. Maybe the science lesson mentions bioluminescence and your child becomes fascinated. So suddenly you're watching documentaries on deep sea creatures, you're researching anglerfish, somebody wants to build an ocean trench model, you're talking about pressure and ecosystems and adaptations, you're revisiting old Octonauts episodes. They're so great. Oh my gosh. And you're watching them both for nostalgic purposes as well as the information, because they're really great and rich in information. And then now you're talking about pressure and ecosystems and adaptations. That's not getting off track, that's learning. It's, yeah, maybe going out of the order you meant to go in when it comes to science, but there's so much value in that lesson and the learning that comes for its own sake that your kids will be getting concepts down that you didn't even plan for them to get to yet. And so it's worth being able to follow those rabbit trails and learn in a way that's super relevant for your kids. A curriculum that makes you feel guilty for following curiosity is probably not serving your homeschool. Okay, so here's a test I want you to start using when you're looking at curriculum. We're going to call it the Hard Tuesday test. Okay? Don't imagine using this curriculum on the most beautiful September morning when everybody slept, breakfast went smoothly, you've had coffee and you were able to drink it while it was hot, the pencils were sharpened, and your child is enthusiastically awaiting instruction. Okay, and this may be a completely imaginary scenario anyway, but we're not going to imagine it because this is not what we want to discuss when it comes to the Hard Tuesday test. Imagine a Tuesday in February. One child slept badly. Someone can't find their headphones. The dog threw up. Oh my gosh, this has happened so many times in my homeschool years. Your ADHD kid is bouncing literally off the furniture. Your anxious child is worried about something that's happening Thursday. You forgot to switch the laundry and now you have to rerun it because it smells mildewy. You haven't finished your coffee. You don't even remember where you put it. And I want you to look at that curriculum through those eyes, that harried mom on a terrible, hard Tuesday. Could you still use that curriculum? Would you have it in you to pull that out and get even a couple things done? Can you say, today we'll just listen to a chapter instead? Can you do the chapter or the lesson from the couch? Can you cut 20 questions or problems down to 5? Can you talk through the assignment or the lesson or the measurement or the learning? Can you stop after 15 minutes and still feel like some learning and memorable and meaningful learning has happened? If the entire system collapses the moment your family isn't functioning optimally, that curriculum is probably a little too fragile for your actual life when you're homeschooling and parenting neurodivergent kids. And I don't know about you, but I don't want fragile systems in our homeschool. I want resilient systems. I want a system that can bend with us, flex with us, move around with us, be adapted, especially for neurodivergent families like mine, like yours. So I really want you to look at anything you're considering spending money or time on through that Hard Tuesday test. Okay? Now, before we end this episode, it's getting a little long, so I don't want to keep you for too long, but I want to give you a couple of red flags that I would really seriously consider when it comes to curriculum. These aren't automatic deal breakers, but things I do want you to notice, okay? Remember, you're the expert on your child, you're the expert on your family, you know them best. So if these red flags for a specific curriculum don't flag you, that's okay too. But I do want you to keep them in the back of your mind. The first red flag is excessive repetition. If mastery requires 5 problems for your child, your kiddo gets concepts within a couple of tries, but the curriculum routinely demands 40. Ask yourself, can you compact this? Is this easily adjusted to meet your child's needs in the fewer repetitions to show mastery? And if it isn't, then it might be something you want to look at a little bit more closely or set aside for a while. So let me just give you an example. One of the strategies, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but one of the strategies that I used to use in the classroom when I worked in the school systems as a gifted specialist is the 5 most difficult problems first. So for my very, very advanced students, particularly in subjects like math that had just clear-cut questions and answers, I would look at the page or the lesson and I would identify what 5 problems on that page were the most difficult problems that showed that the student had understood the materials. So what are the 5 most difficult problems to demonstrate that you get this skill or this concept? If the child could manage successfully all 5 of the most difficult problems on the page, then I would consider that mastery. And so I would encourage their teachers, because I was the specialist helping them to adapt the curriculum, to accept that, to assume that if they got the answers correct for the 5 most difficult problems on the page, then they'd be able to do the other 35 more simplistic problems with equal success. And then if they tackled the 5 most difficult problems first and then still needed some repetition, we'd start with the next 10 most difficult problems. We wouldn't automatically default to the 40, but we could adjust it. So first red flag that you just want to take a look at, is there excessive repetition? Red flag number 2, that output is confused with understanding. If every single subject within a curriculum or every single task within a curriculum, if you're choosing different curriculum providers for different subjects, if every single one requires lengthy written responses, be careful. Your dysgraphic child or your dyslexic child or your impulsive ADHD kiddo who gets oppositional can understand biology without writing 3 paragraphs about mitochondria. So we want to make sure that the task is necessary for the measurement of the understanding of the concept. And if your child can understand the concept and demonstrate it in a different way, then we want to give them the opportunity to do that so they're not always doing what ends up feeling for them like busy work. So we want to make sure that output is not confused with understanding, and there are multiple ways to demonstrate understanding. Red flag number 3, the teacher's guide creates guilt in you. If you look at the guide and you know that you're going to constantly feel behind because you're supposed to be on week 17, you need to consider if that curriculum will end up being like treating you like a slave to it or managing you instead of supporting you and helping you. Your goal is to raise and educate your children to be the best versions of themselves, not to be a slave to the curriculum that you've purchased. Okay, red flag number 4, there's only one way to use it. This is a big one for our neurodivergent learners, right? If adapting the curriculum supposedly ruins the way it's presented, it's probably not a great match for neurodivergent families. So you want to look at that one a little bit more carefully. And then finally, red flag number 5, everything is grade locked. Your child may need 7th grade science, 5th grade mathematics, 10th grade literature, and speech to text for written work. That's okay. That's asynchronous learning. That is completely normal for gifted, twice exceptional, and otherwise neurodivergent kiddos. Buy for the skill that you're trying to measure and help them master, not their birthday. This is where grade levels don't mean as much as homeschoolers, and we have the freedom to meet our asynchronous learners where they are. They don't have to feel behind because they're learning something appropriate for them every single day. Our goal is to move them slightly forward every single day and not be a slave to whatever their age on their birth certificate says they should be a slave to. Red flag number 6, it requires enormous parent prep. Be realistic about your own executive function skills too. We've talked about this before. Apples don't fall far from the proverbial tree. You are likely some level of neurodivergent also, or have some struggles of your own. And if that is with executive function, you need to be realistic. You know what's worse than a curriculum your kiddo can't sustain? It's a curriculum that you can't sustain. Remember, I said at the very beginning of this episode, you are going to be in your homeschool the longest, and the best curriculum for you and your family is the curriculum you are going to use. If every Sunday requires 2 hours of printing, laminating, cutting, gathering obscure supplies, organizing binders, and pre-reading pages, ask yourself if future you is actually going to do that still in October or November. Maybe you will. Great. If you know yourself and you know that feels good for you, then do it. But I really caution you to choose based on the parent you actually are, not a fantasy homeschool mom. She has unlimited laminating time. I don't know her. I'm not sure you do either. Here's the thing. We are busy. Homeschooling. Okay, so parenting a neurodivergent child, let alone multiple if you don't have an only in your home. I have 4. Parenting a neurodivergent child is a lot. It's work. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's very tiring but rewarding. And it's something for which you won't see the fruits and the rewards for years and years. But it's a lot. Homeschooling those neurodivergent kids and parenting them, that's that whole busyness and hardness of parenting on steroids. It's a lot. And so you need to be realistic with what you're going to have the capacity to handle, even on the bad days. Okay, 7 questions that I want you to ask when you are filtering the curriculum. So these are like the 7 questions that become the filter for what curriculum you're actually going to purchase for the given subjects. You don't have to remember all of these, so you don't have to write these down. You could. If you want to write them down, feel free. You can put me in slow motion or you can speed me up, whatever you want. But you don't have to, because the show notes for this episode include a blog post that summarizes everything that we talked about if you prefer to read, or if you just know that you need the bullet points of it. And that information will be in those show notes. So you can just go to my website, go to the show notes for this episode, and print it off if you want. Okay. So, question 1: what is my actual goal for this subject? Not what should a 7th grader be doing? What does my child need for this particular subject? Question 2: where is my child intellectually? What level of ideas and concepts keeps them engaged? We want them to be slightly challenged, but not so much so that they're frustrated. We also don't want it to be so easy they're bored. Okay. Question 3: where do they need scaffolding? And can I adapt it, right? So, where do they need scaffolding? Do they need scaffolding through their writing, working memory, attention, reading mechanics, organization, processing speed? And then question 4 feeds into question 3. Can I separate those things? So, can I keep the intellectual challenge high while supporting the area of difficulty and scaffolding for that? That's probably the most important kind of like combination of questions in this entire filter for neurodivergent kids, especially when those neurodivergent kids are gifted and twice exceptional. So, question 5: how easy is this to modify? Can I shorten it? Can I skip sections? Can I substitute things? Can I accelerate? Can I slow it down? How easy is it to modify? Question 6: will this work on a hard Tuesday? Be brutally realistic with yourself. On your hardest homeschool day, are you still going to be able to sustain at least a portion of this so that you feel good with what you got accomplished that day? And then question 7: does this leave room for curiosity? Curiosity is not an interruption to education. Curiosity is one of the engines that build lifelong learners. And so we want to make sure that the curriculum choices we make leave room for curiosity. Okay, the final thing I want you to think about is, what do you do if you already bought the wrong thing? If you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, this is great, Colleen. Where was this episode 3 months ago? I just spent $400 on stuff. First, don't panic. Before abandoning something, see if you can change the way you're using it. Ask yourself, what's actually causing friction, or what do I think isn't going to work? And assess that. Is it the quantity? Is it the handwriting? Is it the pace? Is it the reading load, the organization? Is it the boredom that you are anticipating? Independence expected of the curriculum, sensory demands, perfectionism? Change that piece. You don't have to abandon an entire curriculum if it's not working or you think that it might not be a good fit. You can just change the pieces that don't fit. Maybe your child has 5 math problems instead of 25. Maybe you read the textbook aloud. Maybe they dictate answers to you and you write them down. Maybe they just tell you about the answers and you don't do any writing of it down. Maybe you use the curriculum 3 days a week. Maybe like our history adaptation, you use the history book twice a week, supplementary documentaries twice a week, and then you talk once a week. Maybe you keep the books, but you ditch the worksheets. Maybe you use the scope and sequence as a guide and you build your own learning and rabbit trails around it. You don't necessarily need a new curriculum. You just need permission to use the one that you have differently. And here it is. Permission granted. You can use that curriculum in any way, shape, or form that fits your family. Here is your permission slip. Write it down. Email me and I'll email you back a permission slip. But before we close, I want to say something especially to the parent who has tried 3 different math programs, 4 writing programs, I don't know, an unnamed number of planners, 17 different pencil grips, and approximately 9,000 different schedules, including color-coded situations. Your child is not failing the curriculum. You are not failing the curriculum. Neither of you are failing at this homeschooling thing. Curriculum is a tool, and sometimes tools fit. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they need modification. And sometimes you put the tool down and you choose a different one. The goal is not curriculum completion. The goal is growth, learning, curiosity. The goal is helping your child understand my brain is capable of learning, even when I need to learn differently. That's what we're protecting. So the next time you find yourself scrolling through curriculum options and being seduced by the beautiful books, the gorgeous planners, the perfectly arranged manipulatives, the watercolor illustrations, the maps. Oh my gosh, the maps. Pause. Ask yourself, can it bend? Can it meet the brilliant parts of my child without punishing the struggling parts? Can it support the struggling parts without underestimating the brilliant parts? Can I adapt it to the child standing right in front of me? Because when you're homeschooling a neurodivergent learner, the best curriculum isn't necessarily the prettiest. It isn't necessarily the most rigorous. It isn't necessarily the one everyone in your homeschool group is using. It's the one that you're going to use. It's the one that you can make use. It's the one that you can make work for your child. And if you're trying to figure out what that looks like for your own neurodivergent kid, that's exactly the type of thing that we talk about in the Learners Lab. It's not about handing you another perfect homeschool plan to follow. It's not even about telling you what the perfect curriculum is. It's about giving you the support, resources, idea, and a community that understands the different kids need different paths and that the kid in front of you is exactly the person he or she is meant to be. And they're beautifully amazing exactly as they are. And it's about helping you feel confident in building your own plan, your own success, and supporting your very amazing child because you are exactly who that child needs. You're the perfect teacher for them. Your homeschool doesn't need to look like anybody else's to be exactly what you and your child need. I'll be back, same time, same place next week with another episode. Give some love to CTC Math and thank them for continuing to support this podcast and the messages that we are able to give to you. If you know somebody within your homeschool world who could use this message, who could really use this type of support, please forward this episode to them. Help them understand, help them find the resources they need and a cheerleader for them as well. Forward it, point them in the right direction, and subscribe if you haven't already. All right. Check out the show notes for this episode over at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And I will talk to you soon. Enjoy your kids. Have a great week. Bye for now.
This summer, turn your gifting game up during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, you can score up to 30% off succulents, bonsais, fresh-cut blooms, and more. Whether you're celebrating a birthday, sending a thank you, or a just because surprise, 1-800-Flowers lets you save big on a stunning selection of gifts. Save up to 30% off during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. Gift something unforgettable today.